Good afternoon, class. Welcome back. Can anybody give me a summary of what we talked about last class?
Reconstruction.
Reconstruction. And what was the biggest main idea of Reconstruction? What were the people back then trying to accomplish? Go ahead.
Bringing everyone back together after the war.
Exactly. So reconciliation, Reconstruction, bringing people back together. All right. So we also talked about how we're going to be kind of playing a game in class. We're going to develop our own characters from this time period, get an idea of what their beliefs were, what their political ideas were, and then we're going to kind of use some of our perspective and kind of play a role-playing game to try to figure out how we would participate in Reconstruction if we were back then. So to do this, we need to do a little research. Has anybody done research before in any other classes?
A little bit.
Kinda. Okay.
Yeah. I've used Wikipedia.
Yeah, Wikipedia is a source. It's a way to get a good overview of a topic, not necessarily maybe citing and doing real research for a paper or a project.
Oh.
It's a good way to figure out the general idea of a topic. So what we're going to be going over today is just that. We're going to be going over sources. We're going to be going over primary sources and secondary sources. Have you ever had a class talk about primary and secondary sources?
No.
No? Well, that's good we're talking about this today then. So, what does the word primary mean?
First.
First. What does the word secondary mean?
Second.
Good. It's pretty self-explanatory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about primary sources, we're talking about people that were there, people that were at the event. So, for example, if you were at the election of Donald Trump, then you could write a paper about that, and that would be a primary source because you were there. Now, someone that reads your paper and then writes a response to it, that's a secondary source. That's someone commenting on your experience, your hands-on experience with that. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So can we think about some primary sources in the real world today that maybe you guys know of?
When the news anchors go to a scene of an accident
Mm-hmm.
and they're reporting on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That could be a primary source. Jalen, do you have an idea of what one is? Or maybe you can give me an example of a secondary source.
Well, a secondary source could be interviewing somebody who was at one, if they're a news person. Interviewing somebody who was at an event, right?
Can an interview be a secondary source, and does it
That
have
would
to be a source on a source?
It would be more of a source on a source. So as much as someone giving an interview, the person that's interviewing is prompting that person.
Oh.
And so a lot of those ideas are from a person that was actually there. So that would be a hands-on experience.
So would a secondary one be I'm watching the news and the news anchor reported it, so then mine would be a secondary.
Exactly. So if Kelsey was to go watch the news and then go and tell her friend about what she saw on the news, Kelsey would be a secondary source.
Got it.
Does that make sense, Jalen?
Yeah.
Good. You're on the right track. It was a good thought process. So what we're doing later today is we're actually going to go to the computer lab and we're going to look up some primary sources and some secondary sources and try to get a picture of the character that we're going to kind of build and use in this role-playing game to try to get perspective and ideas of what the Reconstruction was and how a first-person experience of that. So let's go over I'll give you guys a couple hints here. So a song can be a primary source. So any song. So a song on the radio, if they're talking about the experience they went through, whether it's a breakup or whether it's a rap song and they're talking about how they went to jail or how they did something good for the community or they want something to change or something how they observed, that would be a primary source.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and then a secondary source could be sometimes a news anchor reporting or a person talking about a politician's speech. So the politician's speech would be a primary source. But someone on the news team that's saying, oh, I think Donald Trump was wrong about this when he made this speech, that would be a primary or a secondary source. So we'll put news anchor
Well, we already talked about a news anchor being a primary, because can they be both?
This isn't necessarily a news anchor. I'm sorry. You're right, Kelsey. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. This isn't necessarily a news anchor. I'm talking about more of someone that's analyzing Donald Trump's speech. So if we brought Donald Trump's speech in here and we looked at it and we said, I don't know.
Like when I watched it on Ellen.
Yeah, exactly. So talk shows. That's a good one. Thank you.
Like Good Morning, whatever, another.
Good Morning America. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. They're talking about issues in their own perspective and the news industry's perspective, okay? Can you guys give me some examples from the real world, maybe? Can you think of any?
What do you mean? Like, besides talk shows?
Besides talk shows and songs, just give me some examples.
Oh.
Just throw out ideas. Nothing is wrong, you guys.
Well, documentaries can kind of be both.
Yep. Documentaries can definitely be in between. What do you think, Kelsey?
Would a newspaper be it could be both, right? Because like if it's something, or it could be a second thought.
Mm-hmm. So exactly. So a lot of these ones that fall in between, you have to determine whether it's opinion or observation. And that's hard. Because when we talk about opinions, so if I was to argue my opinion, I believe that cats are the best animals in the whole world. That's an opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to say it like I believe it, and that I think it's a fact because it's my opinion and I want to be right. So we have to be able to kind of dissect whether or not it's an opinion or it's an actual observation that's based in fact.
So
okay.
Facebook is mainly secondary?
Correct. Facebook is mainly secondary unless you see an article that's cited by an actual author. Sometimes you find news articles on Facebook too. So you always have to be aware of what's kind of being projected in a piece. And that's what we're going to kind of do when we go to the computer lab here in a little bit.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.